Humanity is facing an uphill battle when it comes to preserving our planet. In order to avert some of the worst effects of climate change, experts say that we need to stop global temperatures from rising 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. To do this, global carbon emissions need to drop to zero by 2050. It will take a variety of solutions to achieve this goal, but one tool that's gaining traction is green hydrogen.
Green hydrogen is hydrogen that's been produced exclusively from renewable power.
The advantage of green hydrogen is that it's a clean-burning molecule, meaning that it can help us to decarbonize a range of sectors that have proved hard to clean up in the past. This includes the chemical, iron, and steel industries, as well as transportation, especially long haul. Hydrogen can also be used to heat our homes and store renewable electricity that would otherwise be wasted.
If we are serious about decarbonization, if we are serious about going into a world which has zero carbon emission, there is no choice but using hydrogen. Renewable energy can get you so far, actually up to 50 to 60% reduction in total emission in the world, because there are a lot of other industries and downstream products which are still emitting but have nothing to do with renewable energy. And hydrogen could be the solution.
The catch? Because hydrogen is very reactive, it's not found freely in nature and only exists combined with other elements. For example, water is a combination of 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom. So to get hydrogen, you must produce it by extracting it from naturally occurring compounds like water. It's an energy-intensive process, and although hydrogen itself is a clean molecule, most of the hydrogen produced in the US today is extracted from fossil fuels in a pollution-heavy process. Globally, hydrogen production is responsible for around 843 metric tons of carbon dioxide every year. That's equivalent to the yearly CO2 emissions of Indonesia and the United Kingdom combined. That's why green hydrogen is so appealing. But producing it is still very expensive, and although costs are coming down, a number of other challenges remain, including the lack of infrastructure to transport and store it, and the fact that fuel cells, which convert hydrogen to usable energy for cars, are still very expensive. Still, solutions are coming, and overcoming some of these challenges could propel the hydrogen market to $2.5 trillion in direct revenues by 2050. Hydrogen can be produced in a number of different ways. Experts categorize the sources and processes by which hydrogen is derived using colors. The overwhelming majority of hydrogen today is produced from fossil fuels. Brown hydrogen is made from coal in a process known as gasification. Gray hydrogen accounts for 3/4 of all hydrogen production in the world and is extracted from natural gas via a method known as steam methane reforming. A downside to both these processes is that they emit large amounts of CO2. Blue hydrogen is also made from fossil fuels, but incorporates carbon capture and storage technology. Another way to produce hydrogen is through a method known as electrolysis. Here, a device known as an electrolyzer splits a compound into its constituent elements using an electric current. In this case, the compound is fresh water, which is split into hydrogen and oxygen. If the electricity comes from renewable sources like wind and solar, the subsequent hydrogen is known as green. Around the world, the majority of hydrogen today is used in industry, including oil refining, ammonia production, methanol production, and steel production. But recent advancements in green hydrogen production and storage, combined with a global push towards sustainability, means that green hydrogen is becoming much more appealing for a number of different industries. And nations are seeing the potential.
Europe is the leader. Part of the Green Deal, which is up to 1 trillion euros of incentives of green initiatives in the next 10 years, give or take half of it is actually being directed to hydrogen, so close to $500 billion of euros in the next 10 years. China actually have strong targets to increase quite dramatically their production of energy, plus to move their car fleets from a combustion engine to hydrogen. South Korea and Japan are very focused about fuel cells and about the automotive market moving to hydrogen.
In the US, President-elect Joe Biden has also made a big pledge to fight climate change.
We're going to invest $1.7 trillion in securing our future so that by 2050, the United States will be 100% clean energy economy.
Back in October, the U.S. Department of Energy also announced that it would invest up to $100 million to advance hydrogen production and fuel cell technologies research and development. The first industry hydrogen has the potential of transforming is transportation, where hydrogen can act as a direct replacement of gas and diesel and holds some advantages over electric vehicles. Because hydrogen is an energy carrier and not an energy source itself, hydrogen fuel must be transformed into electricity by a device called a fuel cell stack before it can be used to power a car. Inside each individual fuel cell, the process looks something like this. Hydrogen drawn from an onboard pressurized tank reacts with a catalyst. Most often, this catalyst is made from expensive platinum. As the hydrogen passes through the catalyst, it's stripped of its electrons, which are forced to move along an external circuit, and consequently produce an electrical current. This electrical current is then used by the electric motor to power the car. The only byproduct is water vapor. Of course, the advantage of hydrogen fuel cell cars over conventional cars is the possibility of having a zero carbon footprint. But if you have to go through the trouble of converting hydrogen to electricity to use it in cars, why not just use battery-powered cars?
The difference between a battery electric vehicle and a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle is that you essentially get a much faster refueling times, 5 minutes for the hydrogen fuel cell vehicle compared to 45 minutes for the battery vehicle. You also, with a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle, get about 5 times better energy storage per unit volume and weight. So that frees up more room in the automobile for other things, passenger space, storage space, and also allows you to go further. So you're going to get longer ranges with a fuel cell vehicle.
Experts believe that hydrogen fuel cell vehicles can be especially effective when it comes to long-haul trucking and other hard-to-electrify sectors such as freight shipping and long-haul air travel. All applications where using heavy batteries would be inefficient.
The larger the vehicle or the device that you're talking about, the bigger the advantage to hydrogen. It gets to the point with a truck, an 18-wheel truck, that using a lithium battery would be almost ridiculous. Your entire truck would have to be a lithium battery to make it practical, or else the truck driver would have to be charging up the truck all the time instead of driving it.
But adoption of hydrogen fuel cell vehicles has been slow. Globally, there were more than 18,000 hydrogen fuel cell vehicles on the road at the end of 2019. By comparison, there were 7.2 million electric cars on the road. Today, only 3 car companies offer hydrogen fuel cell passenger vehicles: Honda, Hyundai, and Toyota, and they all cost around $60,000. That's twice the cost of some entry-level EVs. Hyundai, along with Toyota and its truck subsidiary Hino, are also working on hydrogen fuel cell trucks. France's oil and gas giant Total recently invested in hydrogen fuel cell truck and bus startup Hyzon Motors. And Nikola Motors has said that it will begin consumer production of its hydrogen fuel cell truck in 2023. But one company not convinced of the advantages of the fuel cell truck is Tesla. Tesla is instead working on an electric semi-truck, which it hopes to start delivering in 2021. CEO Elon Musk has even gone as far as calling fuel cell technology mind-bogglingly stupid. A big barrier to the adoption of hydrogen fuel cell vehicles has been a lack of fueling station infrastructure, because even though fuel cell cars refuel in a similar way to conventional cars, they can't use the same stations. Worldwide, there are only 407 operational hydrogen stations today. The majority are located in Europe, followed by Asia, and finally North America. In the US, there are just over 40 public hydrogen fuel stations, with all but one in California.
You have to build the stations, you have to build the refining capability, you have to have the trucks that can move hydrogen to the stations or the pipes under the ground to move them to the stations.
Aside from the infrastructure, one point that is frequently brought up as a problem with hydrogen fuel is its inefficiency. That's because by the time that hydrogen fuel is manufactured, transported, and distributed, and transformed to electricity in the fuel cell, 70% of its efficiency is lost. This challenge is mitigated somewhat by the fact that hydrogen is very energy dense, meaning that it can hold a lot of energy in a small volume.
When you buy a kilogram of hydrogen, you're buying the same amount of energy as buying a gallon of gasoline. The difference is when you go to then convert that hydrogen into useful propulsion of your car, it's about 2 to 3 times as efficient as burning gasoline, because it's an electrochemical reaction, it's not combustion, so it's much more efficient. So you can immediately divide today's cost of hydrogen by about 2 or maybe 2.5 times. So the goal is to get hydrogen for vehicles to be down around the cost of today's liquid fuels, gasoline and diesel.
Along with the cost of hydrogen, the cost of fuel cell car components and storage also needs to come down.
It's very expensive today to produce a fuel cell without subsidies, government intervention or anything. The gap can get as high as $50,000 per unit.
Hydrogen has to be kept under a huge amount of pressure. So you do have to have very expensive, extremely high pressure tanks.
New developments are starting to make fuel cell technology and hydrogen storage a bit more affordable, but scaling it will take time.
My company, Kubogen, has been working on a new hydrogen storage material. So you get basically 4 to 5 times more hydrogen in the same space. So your tank can be smaller, or you can get longer range, or any combination of the two. And the cost is actually projected to be 4 to 5 times cheaper for the entire system than a current 700 bar system. And it gets to the point with our material that the only cost factor when comparing a battery vehicle to a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle is the cost of the fuel cell and not the cost of the storage system.
Another
of the peak needs of the city of Los Angeles.
Today, companies like NextEra Energy, Eos Energy, and even Tesla store excess renewable energy in batteries. But there's a big drawback.
If you're only storing electricity for a short period of time, it's much better to store it in a battery. You can do that at a lower cost, so there's a better efficiency to that storage process. But if you want to store electricity for a long period of time, battery storage gets more and more expensive. You have to build more and more batteries. Whereas with hydrogen, we can store it underground in large salt domes for long periods of time at very low cost.
Hydrogen's versatility means it has the potential to disrupt many avenues of our economy, from energy production and storage to transportation and industrials. In fact, analysts think that by 2050, clean hydrogen could account for an estimated 22% of our energy needs, up from just 4% of the energy that hydrogen supplies today. But this would require massive amounts of additional renewable electricity generation. One study estimates that generating enough green hydrogen to meet a quarter of our energy needs would take more electricity than the world generates today from all sources combined, and an investment of $11 trillion in production, storage, and transportation infrastructure. Still, analysts say we're moving in the right direction.
We actually see a complete dive down of hydrogen production cost, which has been driven from two sources. Electrolyzer prices are down 50% in 5 years, and the second element, which is renewable energy costs, which are also down between 50 to 60% already, and we believe both of them will go down another 60 to 70% before the end of the decade.
As you get that scale of fuel cells in trucks and other applications going up, costs will come down. You'll start to see other applications emerging. It all comes down to economics. So that's really what the goal is, get that cost of the green hydrogen down where it starts to displace some of these fossil fuels.
Many experts believe that these advancements can't come about without government policy and investment. To some degree, governments are already stepping in.
In 50 years, I believe that hydrogen is going to be a very integral part of our life. If we are serious about decarbonization, we just have no choice but to have hydrogen in scale.